You don't want that.
Call the meeting of the Township of Parsippany Troy Hills Planning Board to order. It's 7:32 p.m. This meeting is being conducted, and adequate notice of this meeting has been given, and it's being conducted in accordance with NJSA 10:4-6 at SEC of the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act. Ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Ask everyone to please silence the ringtones and alerts on your cell phones. Okay, I'll open the meeting to the general public for anything that is not on our agenda for this evening. Seeing no one come forward, I'll close the public portion. And please call the roll.
Mr. Perelik.
Here.
Councilman DePiero.
Here.
Mr. Frigieri.
Here.
Ms. Hernandez. Here. Mr. Mendel.
Here.
Mr. Mealy.
Here.
Mr. Patel. Ms. Veely.
Here.
Mr. Von Aiken.
Here.
Chairman Keller.
Here.
Also with us, Board Planner, Ms. Favate.
Here.
Board Attorney, Mr. Carlson.
Here.
Board Engineer, Mr. Canjiano.
Here.
Okay, we have a resolution on the agenda, but we're going to carry that to the next meeting. Would someone like to move the minutes of July 8th, 2019?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we accept these minutes.
Is there a
For-
second?
Second Mandel.
Mandel seconds. Please call the roll.
Mr. Perelik.
Yes.
Excuse me. Councilman DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Frigieri.
Yes.
Ms. Hernandez.
Yes.
Mr. Mendel.
Yes.
Mr. Mealy.
Yes.
Mr. Von Aiken.
Yes.
Chairman Keller.
Yes. Okay, the only agenda item for this evening is application number 18:511, Consolacion Navarro at 544 Allentown Road, block 306, lot 1, for minor subdivision with C variance. It was carried from July 22nd.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Attorney Rosemary Stone Dougherty, 54 Main Street, Chatham, New Jersey, here on behalf of the applicant, Connie Navarro. Mr. Chair, if I may sit.
Sure, please do.
Okay. As Mr. Chair indicated, we were last in front of everybody here on July 22nd, 2019.
Can you just make sure you're speaking into the mic? We want to make sure we pick you up for the record.
Just move it in front of you. Yeah, there you go.
There you go. Thank
Perfect.
you.
So as Mr. Chair indicated, we were last here on July 22nd, 2019, where at that time we made a presentation regarding a minor subdivision of the property at 544 Allentown Road, that as a result of the minor subdivision would require 2 mirror image variances, which would total 4 variances, and 1 variance for the driveway setback on the existing lot. With that being said, there was a lot of comments in the engineer's review letter that was last updated July 6th, it was originally dated July 16th, 2018, but updated July 2nd, 2019. And when we left this board, we were charged with going through and trying to minimize the engineering and review comments, which Mr. Miola did. We submitted new revised plans, and as a result, we have 2 new review letters, one dated September 16th, 2019 from your board engineer Keller and Kirkpatrick Inc., and one dated September 17th from PFJ Planning, the board's planner. So at this time, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to recall Mr. Miola, my client's engineer, having go through the revisions that are noted on the revised plans.
Sir Alderman Hyde, you're still under oath from the last time you were here?
Yes, I know. I am.
And Mr. Miola, you're still licensed since the last hearing, correct?
Yes.
So, Mr. Miola, can you highlight the revisions that were made and
Yes.
shown on the revised plans that were submitted to the board and should be properly dated August 28th, 2019, correct?
Yep.
We had discussions with the client about trying to reduce the coverage on the lot that has the existing home on it. We looked at it, they took off a portion of an appendage that was on the north side of the home, and they are taking down a shed in the rear that will help reduce the impervious coverage. The second thing was, we contacted the utility companies, got information on where the water and the sewer was. The water line comes from the existing home straight out to Allentown Road. So our plan is to cut off the water line at the property line, use the connection for the new home, and then run a connection for the existing home out to the water line that's in Delanco. That makes the most sense. The other thing we did, I know there was a lot of question about the height of surrounding houses and stuff, so if you look at the area map, we have measurements where we have measured the heights of every single house around us. So, and as expected, it's a mixed neighborhood, so you have heights that vary anywhere from 15 feet up to 30 and a half.
And Fred, just to be clear, what is the proposed height of the house the applicant is proposing to build?
Just check, but I believe it's 36. Height is 32.4.
And that's within the mix of heights that you indicated you superimposed onto the tax map, correct?
Yes,
And that's also under the town's ordinance as far as maximum height permitted, correct?
yes it is.
So Fred, some of the other things that you were asked to do, which was of importance to the board, was some proposed landscaping. Can you highlight to the board what was proposed?
Yes. What we've done is provided landscaping around the front and the Allentown Road side of the home. We've put a row of, I think they were emerald green arborvitaes. Let me check. Gold tip arborvitaes between us and the neighbor to our east. And then we have a row of arborvitaes also separating the two driveways between the existing home and the proposed home.
And Fred, one of the other concerns some of the board members indicated was they were just trying to visualize how, once the lot was subdivided, where the new footprint or new house would be on the newly created lot, correct?
Yes,
So one of the things you went back to your office and did was you did a, for lack of a better word, you came up with an exhibit to be able to show how that building footprint would be, correct?
yes.
Council, I believe, if my notes are correct, we're on A4.
Oh, that's correct, yes.
So A4 I would propose to submit is a copy of the tax map with the existing structures all depicted on it, as well as a footprint to show where the new house would be located, so the board could get a better feel for what the neighborhood would be if the subdivision was approved.
Just for a correction, this is an aerial photo from the Morris County Planning Board. Not a tax map.
Sorry about that.
That's okay, just for the
So
record.
we have numerous ones, if I can just pass them down.
Please. Please.
Okay, here, I do have one here and there, so, that's what for everybody. So Fred, based off the aerial map,
Yes,
and obviously when you do an aerial map, it's not necessarily perfect, correct?
no, they're not, the aerial photos are not adjusted for the tilt of the plane or anything, which what you normally would do when you do topographies. So you gotta understand that it's not perfect, but it gives you a good representation of what the neighborhood looks like.
Okay, and the blue outline, which you show where the new lot would be created, Is that the actual footprint that's proposed, or is that the building footprint?
No, that's the building footprint. That's the actual footprint of the home that's on the plans. We took it from our plan, superimposed it on this plan. Okay.
So
To be-
this is
to be-
not
I'm
showing
sorry.
the larger building envelope, this is showing the actual proposed footprint of what the plan shows,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay. And how the house would be basically configured on the lot, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So then another concern of the board was that they were still trying to better understand what the final elevation of the house was going to somewhat look like in the plan. So were you able to resolve that with the applicant and the architect?
Yes, myself and the architect had 3 or 4 just talks about it, and he came up with a plan that I believe satisfies what the board's concern was.
Okay, and do you have copies of those plans with you tonight, Fred?
Yes.
Okay, and these would be A5, council? And these are comprised,
have
Nora,
numbers,
of 3 pages.
And these are elevations? Elevations?
Yeah, the front and just the floor plan layout.
Okay.
Rosemary, would you pass this extra one to the public?
Absolutely. This one is A4. So Fred, can you just kind of take us through A5, please?
Yes. Well, this is the house that's going to be constructed on this lot. What was pointed out, and I apologize because I had forgotten about it, that we had prior agreed to give the neighbor 7.5 feet setback. So that's why there's that little jog in the kitchen, so that we can accommodate the 7.5 foot setback all along. So this house was modified slightly from the one that you had before. It was reduced by about 30 square feet, to be exact.
So that reduced the overall square footage just slightly, correct?
Very
Fred?
slightly,
'Cause
yes.
that was a small little bump out there,
Yep.
correct?
Yes.
Okay. But again, to be clear, as far as the height goes, there is no variances requested for height. There's no variances requested for the setback of the proposed structure, correct, Fred?
No, there's not.
Okay, so can you just refresh the board's memory as to the mirror image variances that are requested?
Sure. Okay. The variances that are being requested are lot 1.02, which was the proposed home will have a 5,246 square foot lot area, and the ordinance requires 6,000, so we're deficient on lot area. And the ordinance requires 60 feet at the setback, and lot 1.01 only has 56.19 at the setback, even though it has 61.84 along the road, because of the shape of the lot. And as been pointed out for a while, the existing home is encroaching in the right-of-way for Delanco at one little corner by 2.1 feet. And the building coverage for lot 1.01, even though it has been reduced, is still over the 20%. It's at 23.9, which I believe we were at 24 or 25% originally. So, you know, sitting down with the client, going over it, trying to figure out wherever we could shave that made sense to keep the house, he's willing to do. I think I hit them all.
Driveway?
Pardon?
Driveway
Oh, the
setback.
driveway, yes, thank you, Jennifer. Yes, the proposed driveway for the home on lot 1.01 will be right on the property line so that we can get a 12-foot driveway.
Okay, so Fred, I don't want you to belabor the board's time with all the testimony that was at the July 22nd hearing where you went into the, under your exhibit A3, the undersized lots that are in the neighborhood and so forth in the history. But in sitting down with the applicant, do you feel that the revised plans that you've submitted best represents the, best efforts to address all of the engineer review comments that were in the updated letter of July 2nd?
Yes, and I'm glad you said the engineer, because it just dawned on me. We were asked about the utilities, and with the exception of the water, we got all the utilities marked on the plans. The gas is right in front of the home. It's getting picked up. Sanitary is coming out the side of the home, and then there'll be a new sanitary for the existing home. I got the information on the sanitary from the Parsippany Sewer Authority. They had ties on the old home of where the pipe was.
Okay, so Fred, you had an opportunity to read the board engineer's updated letter of September 16, 2019, correct?
Yes, yes,
Okay. And you have it in front of you, Fred?
yes,
right?
I do.
So can you just quickly highlight the 5 comments, recommendations that the board engineer has listed?
Yeah, I mean, item 1, we're perfectly in agreement with. Item 2, soil erosion will do. You know, the easiest thing I can say is all 5 of them we have no problems with. We can do them all. The existing downspouts were our biggest problem because they go into the ground and we haven't been able to find them. So I agree with his suggestion that we're gonna have to inspect it when they're out there working. Probably find the pipe and trace it back, you know, and see where it ended up. You know, and if it's on the lot, then we'll have to adjust it, but nobody seems to know where it is.
Yeah, you just don't want them directing toward the new adjoining lot. You want
Yeah.
to rework them
Yeah,
so that,
well,
and again, that should, do that investigation prior to your plot plan. Have it on the plot plan.
Okay.
That's what we're talking about.
Okay, yeah, because the pipes go into the ground, that's the problem.
Right.
They're all piped underground, and then nobody knows where they go from
I do know
underground.
for, plumbers now, they all have those, the video.
A little
inspection,
camera.
A little camera. So you'll be tearing it up, at one point and do the
Yep.
new lot. You should do the investigation
Yeah.
prior to doing the plot plan.
Yeah, and we're agreeable to that.
Okay. I don't think it's a very heavy lift, but it's
No.
something that needs to be done.
Okay, and Fred, you also had an opportunity to review the board planner's updated memo dated September 17th, 2019, correct?
Yes,
And specifically under landscaping, okay, the planner had some comments. Were you able to discuss or review those with the applicant as far as being able to comply?
yes, we're willing to comply with the landscaping, and we'll work with the planner to pick out plants that are agreeable.
Probably more specifically the township forester, but I'm happy to be
I'm
involved in
sorry.
that as well.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, Fred, any final comments or any final revisions that you want to point out to the board?
No, I think the client has gone a long way in trying to address all the concerns of the board from the last meeting and trying to make this application as palatable as possible. You know, and it's an unusual lot. We got an L-shaped lot that has a long finger that is just nothing but lawn, and the home is all the way on the one side.
Okay, Mr. Chair?
Okay. Mr. Miola, where is the nearest home that's, I think you mentioned the tallest is 31.5 feet, or 31.2.
Yep.
Where's that located?
I believe it's on Delanco further down.
It's not nearby.
There's a 30.5.
30.5 on Delanco on the opposite side of the street. And I stand corrected, there is no 32. 30.5 is the tallest one.
Okay. 30.5?
30.5.
Okay.
You gotta bear in mind that these numbers are, what my field crew did was, our instrument has a prismless mode, so they went out, they shot the floor of the house, and then they shot the peak of the roof. So they're probably a little bit short of the real height, because we didn't take into account the grading around the homes. But most of these homes are probably no more than a foot, 2 feet off the ground.
Okay, and what's the height of 540 Allentown?
540 is the one adjacent to us.
Yes. The one that eats up the L.
One is 18 and one is 22.
No, I believe he means
No,
that.
that
You
one's
mean the
not on
existing
there.
home?
Inside.
Bear with me a second. I apologize.
540 is the
540 is.
immediately adjacent to the property, but the other brother's house, I guess.
21.
Right, you're right, it's not labeled.
It's not labeled?
No, that's the one that's not on there, and I apologize.
And I don't know the address number, but the one immediately adjacent to that going east, that's also a single story.
Yes, the one adjacent to us. On the corner of Sterling and Allentown is 18.2. That's a single-story home.
Okay, 18.2?
Yes.
All right. Another question, the new proposed home would be right on the corner of Allentown and Delanco.
Yes.
I assume that that would be a Delanco address.
I would believe it's a Delanco address.
You
You know, I would think
your,
the safest way to construct this home is to have the driveway off of Delanco, not off of Allentown.
and just a point, this proposed home has no garage, right? Just driveway?
Yes, just the
All
driveway.
right. So the existing home has an address of 544 Allentown. Is that correct?
Yes.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, so what happens to that address? When it
That'll
no
get changed
longer
because the house is
faces,
now going to be facing Delanco. It's going to get a new number.
it'll get a new number, so the front yard would face Delanco. And the front yard setback would actually be negative because it's 2.5 feet into the existing roadway, whereas 25 feet's required.
Yes.
You're going to require another variance.
He counted that as one of the variances.
Yeah, it's already.
He did count that as one of his
Counted, yeah.
variances.
But that's going to be the front yard? I didn't hear him say that.
Yeah,
It's a-
that
It's a
was,
front yard either way.
it's a front yard either way because it was a corner lot.
It's a corner
So
lot.
he did count it in the beginning.
Okay, all right. I have no further questions at this time. Any other members of the board have any questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Mealy?
Mr. Miola, the front elevation, I think you mentioned the total height, but the front elevation doesn't show that. Could you verify that once again? Total height of the house.
Yeah. The, okay, if you look in the middle of the drawing, we calculate the building height. And this is calculated from the average grade around the home to the peak of the roof. So it takes into account approximately a 2.5 foot change in grade from the first floor to the ground.
And that is, I believe you said it was 32.4 feet?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Any other board members?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, what is the condition of the pipe coming from the house, the pipe that you made reference to before?
It's a water line. The water line comes from the house
Right,
all the way across the L portion and ties into Allentown.
right.
So we're gonna cut that off, use the border line if it's in good condition for the new home, and then put a new connection for the existing home right out to Delanco.
And what is the age of that pipe?
I don't know. Obviously, if, you know, when the water company looks at it, if it's in disrepair, if it's too old, when we'll replace the whole thing, we'll just shut it off.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yes, please. I don't see it anywhere on here. Is there any way to know, I'm just curious, how close that existing house that will be behind the proposed house is. On the exhibit, it looks like it's almost to the property line. Is there any way to
I
tell?
have an old survey of that house, and I believe it's 5 feet.
5 feet?
That house is 5 feet from the
Because the
property
proposed is
line.
7.8?
We're proposed 7.8,
And then that house is 5.
yes. Yeah, it's 5
It's
foot in the
about-
front and
there'll be
5.1 in the rear.
12 feet between the two homes.
Yes.
And again, Fred, the required side yard setback is 6 feet, correct?
Yes.
Right, right. So the other home adjacent is currently non-conforming, but we're pushing our house 7.8 to allow additional
Correct.
width,
Yeah.
what's the right word?
To
Celia,
make the combined
distance,
side yard
distance,
work.
thank you. Mhm.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make sure that our planner will go over the summary of these things as you wrote in your letter for us. That will probably clarify.
Well, what do you need
Well,
clarification on
just
specifically?
so I get a sense of how tight it is and how much breathing room there is, particularly for the house, the kind of the vertical house there, which it's tight.
Yeah.
But more, so just to get a sense of, I guess maybe I'll be able to visualize better with some numbers.
Okay.
Ideally, an artist rendering of, but we didn't ask for that. So.
And Chairman, may I piggyback on what Bruce is saying?
Sure.
I have the same concerns because I did go out and look at the area, and it just seems like it would overwhelm that corner. It's a
Okay, this-
busy road, so if you could,
Yeah, we
yeah,
need a good summary.
a good, yeah.
All right, any other members of the board have questions?
Mr. Chairman, just one question. What if any additional work is planned for the existing house right now? Because you do have a lot of non-conformance with that property.
Yeah, what's happening with the existing home is they're cutting off an appendage that's about 5 or 6 feet on the north side to allow for the driveway.
Mhm.
The balance of it would remain basically the same. The front door is where it is. And there's a side door that was in that appendage that's gonna get pushed back against the new wall that's gonna be built.
All right. And we currently have 4 variances against that property? Is that the correct number?
Lot area, lot width.
Front yard setback.
Front yard. and
Front
Driveway
yard
setback.
and driveway, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other board questions? Not appearing, I'll open to the public. Anyone in the public have any questions? Not comments, but questions for this witness? Seeing no one come forward, I'll close the public portion.
I just need to ask Fred another question. Fred, on your A4 exhibit,
Yes.
okay, one of the concerns we heard by many of the board members at the July 22nd was exactly what I heard 2 of the board members say tonight, and that was they were trying to visualize where the new house would be located in relationship to the L-shaped piece of property and the mix of homes in the neighborhood, correct?
Correct,
And that was what you were trying to do on the aerial exhibit, correct?
yes.
Okay, just maybe walk through the aerial exhibit where you're showing the proposed footprint. Rather than use the building envelope, you use the actual proposed footprint of the house, correct?
Right, that's the footprint of the home superimposed on the lot.
Right, so if it had a roof peak on it, this would be the house, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then if you go towards the right, you know, you have the adjacent neighbor who has a rather substantial home on that small lot, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and that's the one that's currently non-conforming on their side yard setback. that the applicant took into consideration to move their house further over, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then, I don't think we want to go down Sterling, because that goes down the other way. So now if we reverse down by Delanco, you have the existing home, which is, as the board heard a lot of testimony on at the last hearing, frankly built in a very odd configuration compared to all of the other houses on the street, right? It's kind of at a catty corner.
Yes, it's
correct?
cockeyed to the lot. It causes all sorts of problems for surveyors.
Okay, and then next to it, you have the, moving down, lot 15, right? This is a house with a large detached garage in the back, correct?
Correct.
And is what the board can't see on this aerial is you have the proposed driveway for the existing cockeyed house, as you just called it, abutting next to the driveway side of that house, correct? And that's the one that has no setback, because that's where the driveway is gonna be.
Yes.
Okay, and that kind of cockeyed corner piece of the house is what the applicant is demoing, correct?
Yes.
So now the house won't look as cockeyed, now it'll have a nice even line that'll be parallel to the lot line, correct?
Explain that one again, please.
The lot line, this is the part of the house they're taking off. So now this part of the house, I can't color apparently the
Okay.
things on this,
Yep.
but you understand, would now shave that off, correct?
Right. It's gonna
Okay.
get shaved off.
Right,
So-
okay. And then, can you just kind of circle up in the back around, here you had your crew, you went out, you said, did several measurements as to height, how large a lot of these homes are. In your opinion, is this house within the mix of the character of the sizes of homes that are in this area?
Yeah, I would think that this home is fitting within this neighborhood. The height of the home is reasonable, you know, it has a mix of homes. You have bi-levels there, you have colonials, you have ranch houses. That's your mix in the whole neighborhood.
And there is no height variance required?
And there is no height variance required.
Okay. And to be completely transparent with the board, which your tax map numbers aren't, you took all of the actual grades into consideration and to give the board what the real height of the house would be.
Right.
Not an architectural showing the height at 29.5 and then the real height being 32.
Yeah,
Correct?
and those numbers are a little bit on the conservative side because the guys shot the first floor and they shot the peak of the roof, so it didn't take into account, because we didn't have topography, we didn't take into account the grading around those homes. But I'll tell you, most of those homes I've driven out there 3 or 4 times.
Could- Mr.
They're
Chairman,
relatively
could I
close
just
to the
clarify?
ground, within probably 1.5 to 2.5 feet.
I just want to make sure that I understand. So the numbers that you provided as comparison for the surrounding lots, you're saying you think are actually a bit conservative, but they've taken into account the grade and the actual heights. But the number that's in the zoning table for the proposed home, which is 32.4, I think.
Right, because we didn't have
That's building height by
topography.
zoning, correct?
Right, we didn't have topography, so we went from first floor to peak of roof. That's what they shot. So there's a
Okay.
slight
So
difference
it's like
in
a
there.
little bit apples to oranges, but I think it's your testimony that you feel that some
Yeah.
of this surrounding lots are maybe a little bit undercounted.
Right, yeah, I'm being conservative. I
Right.
mean, I could have taken an average of 2 foot for, which is what you normally need for an average grade around the home, between the lumber and then 8 inches from lumber to ground. It ends up 20 inches minimum. You know, I could have said, okay, let's take 1.7 feet and add it to all of those heights, and I didn't.
Chairman, may I ask another question? Sure. I'm looking at this again, and the existing house that's behind the proposed, what lot number is that?
Is that 2?
Because it,
Yeah, it's incorrect on the county GIS.
the reason why I'm asking is the red line that you've drawn around that house doesn't take into consideration the rest of Lot 2. Because Lot 2's line, as you see, also includes that yard and goes over. And on that plan that's in front of you, you have that Lot 2 as yellow, but it's really a separate lot. So just trying to figure out why the red goes around just the house. It doesn't include the rest of the lot. So it's deceiving to the members because it's making you think that you have right next to it a smaller lot, but you actually don't, because that red line should be on top of that yellow line on the other side of number 2.
Right, lot 2 is both of those colors. And I apologize, this is just what we got from when we requested your map. They came in and they colored it that way.
Right.
You know.
So
But
do you-
yeah, it's got a little bit of an L.
But do the members understand, like, so that red that shows that is around that house is not the full lot. The full lot is actually farther over and into past number 2, and it's a much bigger lot. It's kind of deceiving because it makes you think that, oh, this isn't too bad, there's a tiny lot next to it, but there actually isn't. The red lines are in the
I
incorrect
have one
place.
copy of their survey. If Nora says I can come back and get a copy for my file later.
And we did,
I don't know,
member
I just
really,
wanted to point that out because it's deceiving in that looks like it's a tiny lot, but it's actually not that small of a lot.
Yeah, that lot is 60
Small
feet
lot, but
wide.
not that small.
Not that small. It's small, but it's not that small.
and member Bealey's right though, we did actually discuss that at the last hearing as well, because that was the same issue on your town's own tax map as to how
They're
they
not.
show that lot. And Mr. Miola was able to produce their survey to show that they did actually have both. That's an error in the tax map records for Parsippany, so that's just a continuation. The county sees that aerial with the same error that the township already has, but we did clear that up at the last hearing as well. Thanks to Fred having their survey.
Okay, anything else?
No,
Do you want to
I
summarize?
didn't know if you
or-
wanted to reopen it, I'm sorry.
But, Mr. Chairman, I think that a couple members of the board asked me to do a quick summary, and as part of that, I was going to actually turn back to Mr. Miola to reiterate some of his planning testimony.
Please do.
But because I think some of the concerns I'm hearing are about the variances in relation to the weighing of the public benefits test. It seems to be what concern was. So just to recap, there's 5 new variances proposed. 4 of them appear to be on lot 101, which is the existing home. So it's minimum lot area, lot width, coverage, and the driveway. And one of the variances would be on the newly proposed building lot, which would be on lot area. And then there's the existing variance encroaching into the front yard and right-of-way setback. The applicant previously testified that they were going to be seeking a C variance under the public benefits test, which is the C2 variance. Just a reminder for the board, the point of that variance, the argument that you're supposed to make is that granting the variance will advance the intents and purposes of the municipal land use law and the master plan, and that the benefits outweigh the detriments. And then the other side of that is the negative criteria prong, that you have to demonstrate that the variance can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good. So I think it might be helpful, Mr. Miola, if you could recap a little bit of the prior planning testimony that you gave as
Yeah, I think
as
if
to
you remember
the
at the-
reasoning for that, the C2 variance.
Yeah, I think if you remember at the last meeting, I gave you a list of all the homes in the area and what the square footages were. And there's, I don't want to say a majority, but there's a fair amount of lots that are under 6,000 square feet. And this lot would be keeping with that character. And the home is being sized proportionally for the lot. We're not asking for any kind of deviation other than just permission to do it. I pointed out in the neighborhood one too. I had 9 or 10 lots, I counted it quickly, that went from 4,000 square feet up to 5,970. Most of them are really in the 4,800 to 5,300 square foot areas. And the lot widths of half of those are under 60 feet. There was 250s, 240s, and another 40, so there were 340s and 250s. So it's a mixed neighborhood. You know, it's unfortunate. It's typical what you get in Lake Parsippany because it predated zoning, and these lots were bought. People bought them in groups, and you know they could afford it. They bought 3 lots. If they couldn't afford it, they bought 2 lots. So you have different sizes mixed throughout the whole neighborhood, but it still doesn't change the fact that the neighborhood is a nice neighborhood, even with the mix of sizes. You look at the homes, none of them are in disrepair, they're all in good shape, and this home would just follow along with that. And I think actually the work that they're gonna be doing on the existing home, taking that appendage off would probably help making that home look nicer, because it kinda looks chopped up right now. You know, the house, and you look at it, it's obvious that that was probably one of the older homes, and it started as a one-story bungalow in the front, and then they added the two-story addition in the back, and they bumped out the left side to get a little more space in one of the rooms. You know, it wasn't done as one continuous project and one continuity project.
Hey Fred, so just to, I don't want to take what Susan's probably going to say next, but she's probably looking for the next part of the prom. As far as you're indicating the, for lack of a better word, the benefits that
Yes.
would be outlined if this project was to be forwarded. And I believe, just to add to it, you also had indicated another benefit as far as the use of the property with that unique L shape to it. But can you now address the detriments prong to the planning testimony? In your opinion, would this be a detriment if this plan?
I don't believe a home of this size in this neighborhood would be a detriment. I think it would be fitting in with the character of the neighborhood. The negative is always gonna be, you know, the construction noise while they're building it and the trucks. But at the end, it's gonna be a nice home. You can tell from the architecturals that time went into thinking about it. And it's gonna look nice and be an attractive home in this neighborhood, you know.
Now, Fred, some of the other things you had testified to, just to refresh the board's memory, was the placement of the proposed new dwelling was done intentionally to kind of bring it further away from the corner, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and that was to keep sight distance, correct?
Yep.
Even
Yes.
though there's a lot more room for setbacks there to move the house
Yes.
over. You had also testified, Fred, that that was also done to stay kind of in alignment with the house across the street and how their house faces, correct?
Correct. If you look at that aerial, you can see how the front of this home lines up with the house both to the left and the right.
And that was also done in regards to concern with driveway openings as well, correct? Because you
Yes.
testified that the driveway opening on this would be proposed to be on Delanco,
Yes, it'll be on
correct?
Delanco and with the driveways at the most southerly side of the lot, so it's as far away from the intersection of Delanco as an Allentown as you can get.
And then you also had testified as to concerns as if the lot were not to be subdivided and developed, that this is really one of the last largest lots in the neighborhood,
Yeah,
correct?
Yeah, I believe when I researched it, it's one of the largest lots that has the ability for a subdivision. There are one or two larger lots with much larger homes on them, you know, and that's what happens, you know, because their lot coverage is much less, they can add on a substantial addition, which I think that very large home is out of character with the neighborhood. The neighborhood is a mix of smaller homes, like I said, there's bi-levels out there, there's little Cape Cods, there's ranches, there's two-story homes, which, you know, to a certain extent, that enhances the look of the neighborhood. It's not all the homes are cookie cutter and you drive down the street and everyone looks exactly the same.
And Mr. Chairman Keller was able to even give you more of a history of the house than you even knew regarding kind of how it ended up being the design it was, correct?
Yes.
And you think removing that catty corner piece that's gonna give the house more of a lateral look parallel to its lot line will be an improvement for the neighborhood as well,
Yeah,
correct?
I think so. I think the house would just look like a basic L-shaped home.
Okay, since we've essentially reopened testimony, do any board members have any questions on what Mr. Miola said so far? Any members of the public have any questions on what he's said so far?
No, right now we're limited to questions directed to Mr. Miola based on his testimony. If you'd like to ask him some questions, feel free to come on up. You can't question the attorney. We attorneys are grateful for that.
I'm just confused
Wait a minute, you have to come up, state your name and address for the record, and use the microphone.
Karen Phelps, 21 Delanco Drive. I just had a question about when she was going over the plan or whatever about the driveway. Now, I thought the last time we came, they were not putting the driveway next to the house behind it. I thought they were putting the driveway.
Mr. Miola can answer that question.
So now I'm
That is
confused
correct.
because it sounded like she said they were putting the driveway.
Mr. Miola can answer that question.
Yeah. No, the driveway is going on the northerly side of the existing home, so it's gonna go between the existing home and the new home that we're proposing.
And there's no driveway
And there's no
going-
driveway in that side.
So the driveways are side by side between the two homes?
Yes.
Okay. I was a little confused myself.
No, I apologize. I should have made it
Okay.
clear, so therefore that 0 setback only affected the lot that we were creating. That
The
was
lot being-
done
yeah.
to accommodate the concern of the neighbor to have a driveway so close to their driveway side. Correct.
Okay. All right. Okay, members?
There's another member of the public.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Come on up, sir.
State your name and address for the record and ask your question.
Please speak into the microphone there, too.
So Steve Kuhn, 20 Delanco Drive. I just had a question. What percentage of work is going to be affecting the existing house? Just because I know in New York, I know the New York state codes. I'm not sure about the Jersey.
Yeah, the existing home, if I had to put a number on it, I would say 5%. You know, it's taking off that appendage and putting up about a 12-foot wall with door to enclose the home again.
And that includes the work on the driveway?
And then, well, then you have the driveway. You know, the home is one thing and then the driveway is something else.
New York State, if you do a certain amount of construction on an existing home, you got to bring the whole up to date to current codes.
Yeah, that's, in New Jersey, that's 50%, and we're not even close to that. And the driveway doesn't count, it's only the existing, only the work on the home itself.
Mr. Mayor, do you have a piece of paper there that you can show Mr. Kuhn the appendage that you're talking about?
Yeah, it's over here.
Yeah, we couldn't see it from the.
Take the mic with you.
There's an appendage out here that's gonna be taken off, and this is gonna be squared off. So that's what's getting removed.
I'm just going to put a wall.
Yeah, we're gonna put a wall and a door. There's a door in there now, so we're gonna continue with the door, but it's gonna be a straight wall. Please.
Any other members of the public have any questions?
My name is Joanne McKinney. I'm at 530
You have to speak into the mic, I'm sorry.
Joanne McKinney, 560 Allentown Road, directly across the street. My question is, the way you're gonna do the driveways now versus the last meeting and the meeting before, is there any, does anybody care that we're having a really hard time getting into the driveways now, the way it is now? Because there's usually 3 or 4 cars parked here and cars parked here,
Right.
and the street is really, really narrow. So now
Right.
you're putting another driveway, so.
Right, but that driveway is gonna be in conformance with the code. That driveway's only gonna be 12 feet wide. I know exactly what you're talking about, because I see.
Trying to get out.
Right, it's like having a parking lot right off of the road with right-hand turn in, and they just stack them up going across.
Yeah,
That's gonna all be eliminated.
That's what it looks like, and that's
Yeah.
what the concern is
Yeah,
with the
that's-
home, is an extra home, it just feels like an
Yeah,
apartment building.
that's all gonna be eliminated, and it's just gonna be a straight driveway in, 12-foot wide.
And then we're just gonna have to battle it out in the street, try to get out.
Yeah, if you both happen to be heading out at the same time, somebody's gotta
Okay.
give to
The
the
way
other
it's
one.
gonna be then, thank you.
Any other members of the public have any questions? Okay, I'll ask Ms. Favati to continue with her summary. Or are you done?
That was it, Mr. Chairman.
That was it? Okay.
I just felt that, I think the board needed the benefit of a refresher on the planning testimony, so thank you.
Okay, do you have any closing remarks?
Hold on one second, I just want to confer with my client for a minute. My client, Ms. Navarro, would like to re-testify briefly.
You're still under oath from the last meeting.
So, Ms. Navarro,
Into the microphone if you would, Rosemary. We need the recording, that's, you do.
I was watching her, I apologize.
Okay.
Ms. Navarro, you were here at the July 22nd hearing, correct?
Yes.
And you went away from that meeting and you had several meetings with your engineer, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and also with myself, right?
Yes.
Okay. You heard some of the board members' comments. Can you just briefly highlight your plans for the existing home and for the new home you're building?
Yes. Good evening, board members. I really appreciate, you're here tonight. We tried our very best to be proactive. In the first meeting, I didn't get a chance to attend the meeting as much as I love to because I'm really interested about this property to make it look nice. And just like what I said, when I bought this house, it's really a rundown, and we brought it to life. I spent a great deal of time and money, to make it look nice and fit the character in the neighborhood. And my intention is to make it look good and go with the flow, with the characteristic of our neighborhood. Delanco is a very nice street, and I want everything that you mentioned to accommodate all your requests to make this approval a success, because I know if I will not get the approval, your approval tonight, I ended up, when I do sell it, it's gonna ended up, somebody contractor, to make it look bigger, and it's not gonna flow with the mixed neighborhood. So that's the downside. The benefit of what we're doing right now is to make us, compatible with the mixed neighborhood, and we know that it's an L shape, and we don't want to make it to a waste. We want to bring up the value in our street, and I'm definitely gonna promise everything to do that. We are proactive. We work with my attorney, and definitely, my engineer and my architect are working hard to get this approved. And I really, really do appreciate if you see the benefit of what we're doing, and it's to make it look nice and bring up the neighborhood. Thank you so much for your help.
Okay. Anything else?
No, I'm just reserving the right to summarize after the public comments.
Yeah, maybe other questions of Ms. Navarro, he's gonna get some.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Ms. Navarro? We should have let her sit down. Any questions for Ms. Navarro? Any members of the public have any questions for Ms. Navarro? Seeing no one come forward, I'll close it. Comments?
Closing remarks.
Well, she wanted to reserve until after she said the comments.
Sure.
Any members of the board have any comments on this application?
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Being a resident of the neighborhood, I mean, all of us here take your application very seriously. I walk by your home almost every day. My biggest concern, I know that there's a couple homes, but the height issue for me is a bugaboo. I understand what the ordinance says, and that's one thing, and then there's just my sense of the height, and I respect your efforts to keep the home in its as compact and presentable with the other homes around as possible, but the height gives me pause. And I don't know if it affects other people the same way or not, but the height gives me pause.
Okay, any other comments?
Chairman, may I?
Ms. Hernandez, go ahead.
Okay, I also have that feeling about the height, and because I appreciate that you tried to move it back on the south of Allentown Road a bit, but standing out there and on that intersection, it just seemed with the houses that are at that intersection that it would be
Ms. Hernandez, can I interrupt for one moment?
Yes, please.
I just want to instruct the board on one
Yeah.
point, if I may. There's no
Yes.
height variance required here.
Okay.
So as long as the height is compliant,
That's it.
Okay.
it would be improper to
Okay.
take that into consideration.
All
The
right.
height is in fact compliant. Now, there are four variances required on one property and one on the other, and those are well within the board's consideration.
Okay, comments?
Down here?
Mr. Chairman, I don't happen to live in the neighborhood, but I made it a point of going by and stopping and walking. And, you know, as indicated, it has to pass a public benefits test. And I don't see, personally, how this passes the public benefits test. There's no garage. Parking was mentioned already. I saw the streets. You have your family over. There's only so many cars can go in a driveway, and they're now gonna be in the street. It just doesn't appear to me that this is a viable use of that property. And while you currently you have variances now just because of the age of the property, I don't think we would approve those variances today if you came forward. And so, right now, I will be voting against.
Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman, I have a
Mr.
comment. Yeah. What I see here is a very good attempt to make part of the property very salvageable. Making it just one non-conformance is admirable with the shape of this irregular lot. However, now we've taken one irregular lot and made it two irregular lots. And even more of a concern is the fact that the existing house is now on a property which I struggle to see how this property will retain any value over time. I see this as a tremendous detriment to the neighborhood, that we now have a property which will be difficult to resell, if not remodel or anything else. The amount of space in the back of the lot is now limited to somewhere in the area of 25 feet of buildable space. The area in the front of the lot is so minor. I just can't see any opportunity where the existing property, which now has 4 variances and is in worse condition than it was before, I can't see how this creates any public good whatsoever. I had considered this prior, but in the time since our last meeting, I feel very strongly that this is not in the best interest of the community. So that's my comment.
Any other board members have comment?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman? Yeah.
Yes.
I agree with the 2 previous board members and their concern with the public benefits test. I frankly don't see any at all. I see it all to the benefit of the property owner. So my inclination is to say no to this application.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I'll open to the public. Any member of the public have any comments on this application? Now's the time to come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Karen Phelps. I live at 21 Delanco Drive, which is down at the other end of Delanco by the rescue squad. I have 2 young children. They're not that young, but they walk around that street all the time. They're always outside playing. My concern is the firehouse is there. They're always coming down our street. It's a very narrow street. Again, if they have company over, there's going to be cars in the street. It's going to turn into like a 1-lane road. No one's going to be able to get by. 2 driveways in that one little area seems very small. I also walk around the lake and I walk by that house every day. You said that the height would be the heights around us were up to 30.5 and this would be 32. Even if that's in variance or whatever, it's still going to be out of place with our neighborhood and it's still going to be too high. And when you come to the stop sign that's set very far back, you already have difficulty seeing around the corners. So this is going to make it more difficult to even go up and around the corners. I just think it's not going to be good for our neighborhood. That's just what I want. I think the property, I agree that they want to do something great with the property, but it's a nice property, they could just expand or, knock down the old house and build a new house. Like, would fit into the property a little bit better. That's all.
Thank you. Any other members of the public have any comments? Seeing no one come.
Oh, I was gonna say.
Here we come. It just takes a while.
I'm Joanne Lucchini, I'm at 560 Allentown Road.
You
Oh,
sit
I'm sorry.
speaking to the board, or standing speaking?
560 Allentown Road, Joanne Lucchini, I'm directly across the street. I also have grandchildren in the neighborhood. I have all the sidewalks. Really, really scared of the corner, always have been. I've been there for 44 years. I could tell you the amount of accidents that have happened on that corner only because when you look up Allentown Road, it's like an S. And you just come flying down and you're going from a higher area and then you're going lower. And it's usually right there on my corner. I can't tell you the times that I've called 911 due to the accidents on that corner. If you put that house there, 1 story, 2 story, whatever height you're going to put there, it's so difficult now to get out of my driveway, stop at the legal white line, and you honestly, you got to creep up because you can't see to the right of Allentown Road. I don't know how anybody will ever do that intersection safely with a house on that corner. It's really a dangerous corner. So besides blocking my view, which is just the personal thing, it really is a safety issue. The street is narrow. We never had sidewalks. Sidewalks came in. We never had the cobblestones took land, and the street just became very, very narrow. And because of this house and the way it goes into the street, when it's a time to have the snow plows out, it's really really difficult because of the way they have to go kind of around the house even to get down so that we could get safely so that the firemen could get to the firehouse. So I'm really looking at this as a safety issue between the accidents and just not being able to see on the corner. I appreciate all the time that we've spent here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other members of the public have any comments? Please come forward. Okay, seeing no one come forward, I'll close the public portion. You wanted to wrap up?
I did, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. First, I'd like to say we definitely appreciate all of the board members' times and efforts and comments and letters that we've gotten from your professionals and your engineers. This is not, quote, an easy minor subdivision, if there even is anymore, let's face it. We're pretty well developed, and this Lake Parsippany area is no exception, okay? With that being said, the applicant has taken great strides into coming up with a plan that would make better use of this odd L-shaped, very large parcel of property, other than the easy builder remedy to knock down the existing house and put the largest house we can possibly put there, because we know it. That's what builders do. That's what sells. Okay? Nobody builds a nice little modest one-story ranch anymore. When's the last time anybody has come before this board and said, let me just have a single-story ranch home? It doesn't happen. Times have changed, and a well-mixed neighborhood like we have in this section is exactly that. It is a gem. It's a well-mixed neighborhood, and is what we're proposing is a very modest 1,936 square foot house that makes sense for that neighborhood, that wouldn't make sense maybe in a neighborhood just 500 feet away. Okay? We're not proposing that massive builder-grade home that everybody who watches home TV shows seems to think you can build in 2 weeks anymore. But with that being said, there are some variances that come with this application. But the applicant took great care into looking and designing around their neighbors as well. The neighbor behind us is non-conforming, so rather than us be greedy and go straight to the 6-foot line, we moved the house over another 2.8 feet to give better clearance. We moved the house further back from the intersection to maintain more than the minimum required site triangle. We're almost 3 times what is required for a site triangle. And we did that intentionally because it made sense. That was good planning and engineering, which is what this application is about. We moved the driveway over to accommodate the neighbor next to us so that that 0 setback line would only affect the house that is going to be built next to us, which would be an internal detriment for the applicant herself. We're making sure to reroute all of the utilities so we don't have any easements crossing over property. That's why we spent the time to research all of those water lines like the board's engineers and members asked us to do. And the applicant's engineer has said, listen, we can go to 7 by 12 on the roof, and we can easily bring the roof line another 3 feet down, even though that's not a variance. If that's something that is really a concern for the board, we're listening. If the height, even though it's not a variance, is that much of a concern, we can bring that roof line down approximately another 3 feet just by changing that with my engineer playing architect, which architects, by the way, never like, okay? But with that being said, we really do feel that we have met the C2 variance test. And don't be swayed by the nickname that that test is called. It's the public benefits test. That doesn't mean that we're designing towards the benefit of the public. It means that we're enhancing the goals of the municipal land use law. That's a very fine distinction because that can be characterized in a way that's not really a proper way to look at that test. The C2 variance is often called the flexible C variance by planners because it's where we're acknowledging that we're not a C1 hardship. We're not trying to tell this board we are. Okay, we're not something they're saying so exceptional about the design or configuration of this property that there's no other way to design it. Instead, we're saying we see the neighborhood, we see the development around us. We recognize all of those, and we've now come up with a flexible C variance relief to say, yes, we do have detriments, but we have benefits too. And we feel the benefits, in this case, outweigh the detriments. Now, I know your council will tell you, board members really aren't supposed to talk about, you know, traffic and accidents and how narrow the street is. These are things that the applicant can't change. But the applicant did take these things into consideration after the last meeting. That's why the driveway location was changed too, because now it prevents all those people who are parking along this big empty lot and just take it for granted that we can park and stack all our cars there. That is eliminated by putting driveways there. That helps actually alleviate that concern and condition that the members living on the street have a concern with as well. And of course, when and if the board approves this and a house gets built there, this allows for us to go back in the construction review and talk about some of the concerns that the board public said as well about maybe that stop sign isn't in the most logical place to begin with. Maybe it needs to be brought forward, and if a house was built there, that could happen. So again, don't be misunderstood by the terminology public benefits test. We feel that we have more than met the requirements for C2 relief on this. We do understand it's not an easy application. I wish there was a way, poof, you know, we could make it come in and be beautiful, pick some additional land and not have to come in front of this board at all. But this applicant has taken great strides to listen to every comment, good and bad. Board members who said there's no way in heck we're ever voting for you. We listened to you when we went back to the drawing board. And we ask now that you have an open mind and you weigh those benefits and those detriments and what makes sense for this very odd, oversized, large lot that is the only lot in this neighborhood like this as far as what makes sense to be there. Does it make sense to have 2 very modest houses there that are going to be controlled by this board as to size, height, setbacks, or does it make sense to do no forward thinking on this lot, leave it the way it is, and let's just roll the dice and see what happens down the road? We think the first option makes the best planning sense, and we hope the board agrees. Thank you very much.
Care to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion. I don't make this kind of motion very often, but in this case, I'd make the motion to deny this application on the grounds that it basically does not improve the property itself. In fact, we've gone from one non-conforming lot to two non-conforming lots, and the lot which is not being spoken about very often is actually now in worse condition, in my opinion, than it was before. And not just my opinion, but based on the non-conformance. So I'd like to make a vote to deny this application.
Second, Mandel.
Mandel seconds to deny. Okay, before we call the roll, just for clarification, a yes vote is not to approve. A yes vote is to agree with Mr. Von Aiken to deny. If you want to approve it, you vote no. It confuses some board members from time to time. So please call the roll.
Mr. Perelik.
Yes.
Councilman DiPiero.
Yes.
Mr. Frigieri.
No.
Ms. Hernandez.
Yes.
Mr. Mandel.
Yes.
Mr. Mealy.
Yes.
Ms. Veely.
Yes.
Mr. Von Aiken.
Yes.
Chairman Keller.
Yes. The application's denied.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Take a 5-minute break, and we'll come back to discuss the master plan.
I've never seen a motion like negative.
Really?
I thought it was best practice to have the motion be approved with a deny.
It's fine.
Because otherwise it's.
Well, yeah.
I didn't know if it was really. The zoning officer, I don't have the power for any kind of stuff. So any subdivision.
I feel bad for them. They tried very hard. They spent a lot of money.
Yes, that conforms with.
Yeah.
I appreciate all that you did with all the changes. You guys really were extremely accommodating and each time coming back. I wanted to be able to say that, but then we didn't, we just voted, we didn't give comments, so I did want to put that on the record that you listened to every. No. No, but you guys really did listen to everything we said.
It's not easy when somebody's property is.
Subdivisions are super tough now.
Stretch my legs.
Oh,
We missed
we're
you.
getting a book? Get closer to the
I was
final
thinking
product
that.
here, right?
Not quite there yet, though.
I would say it's looking pretty close. 100%.
No, it says photo to come. Wait a minute.
All right, reconvene the meeting of the planning board of the Township of Parsippany Troy Hills. Call roll.
Mr. Perelik.
Here.
Councilman DiPiero.
Here.
Mr. Frigieri.
Here.
Ms. Hernandez.
Here.
Mr. Mandel.
Here.
Mr. Mealy.
Here.
Ms. Veely.
Here.
Mr. Von Aiken.
Here.
Chairman Keller.
Here. Okay.
Okay, well, it's almost 9 o'clock, so we won't keep you all night, but Noah and I are happy to be here. I'm always here, but Noah's happy to be here.
She speaks for me.
Yes, I speak for you.
Putting words in your
Our-
mouth.
Our third partner in crime, Taylor, his wife is actually gonna have a baby any time in the next couple weeks, so
Is that an excuse?
he's.
It is.
He's staying close to home, I think.
Offer our congratulations.
Yes, so probably next time I see you, I might have some news on that front. But we're here because we basically have a full draft for the first time. And we're excited to share that with you. We are not gonna go page by page.
Oh, please do.
Yes.
That's what we're here for.
We kinda wanted, a lot of it you've seen, especially with the sort of existing conditions, and a lot of the recommendations are not new. We've seen them in some form or another. So we just kinda wanted to touch on some of the new stuff, some of the things we've changed. You're gonna have plenty of time to review this. And so I would characterize this as probably about 85% there. I think the text is very close in terms of the content. There's some tweaks that we want to make on graphics, making sure that it's presented clearly. There's placeholders that you'll see throughout for photos. We've been in touch with Jack Weinstein from the mayor's office, he tells us hundreds of photos that he's going to give us access to. We have our own, but it's always good to have more photos. You never have enough, you find, when you get to the end of the process. So just to kind of dive in on some of the big ticket changes, we added some introductory text in the first few pages that talked a little bit about the process, the engagement that we did, a lot of the meetings that we had, different focus groups. Bless you, Scott. And then,
You only get one blessing.
on page 10, it starts with the goals and policies. The goals are unchanged from what we've previously shown you, but what we've done with these is flesh them out with the policy statements. And we took the existing policy statements that you have from your 2014 plan, which I think were probably carried over from prior plans too, and we used those as a starting point, but I did not feel the need to, copy them, because the things have changed, and I think that the priorities are different. So I would urge you, it's pages 10 through 13 is where it has the goals and policy statements, and I know some of you have expressed that you feel that the policies are very important to get right. So make sure you take a good look at that language and make sure you feel comfortable with that. I'm looking at you, John.
If you wouldn't mind very quickly, Mr. Chairman, is it okay?
Sure, go ahead.
I've expressed to Ms. Favate how important these policy statements are, because if you recall from testimony that's been given here, how often they refer to these goals and these policy statements as support for their positions. And so it's just really important that we make sure that these give the board enough leeway to make sure that we can guide the town the way we want.
Yeah, it's important both on the application side and any time that you ever get referred, ordinances, which we have had a lot of recently, or plans or whatnot. When I do the master plan consistency review, I'm looking primarily at the goals and policies. So just to echo what John said. And then there is a new vision statement, so I'm going to turn to Noah on that front.
Just for clarification, it's an open public meeting, but there's no members of the public here. So feel free to not follow the protocol. You can address Susan.
Okay.
Still being recorded.
There is
It is still being recorded,
But
so we don't
it's
want to
a
have
work
a
session.
free-for-all here, but,
Practice makes perfect.
Just be respectful, and here we go.
So I'll just be brief with the vision. We just tried to encapsulate some of the comments that we heard at the public meeting from you, from various stakeholders, from the public survey. One of the big themes that seemed to it's kind of a very on the nose, but that's like connecting things together. But this idea of connectivity, I think we mentioned this earlier, both from a physical standpoint and a social standpoint. Parsippany being really divided in a sense by the roadways, that creating separate neighborhoods, and also by the development patterns through the years, have just kind of created these pockets where people identify sometimes more with their neighborhoods than with the township as a whole. So one of the guiding themes that we proposed in the plan was this idea of connectivity, and this page just kind of summarizes it. We have
Page
a fun.
14.
Oh, sorry, page 14. Thank you. So one being connectivity for the streets themselves, so having a safe and friendly street network, making it easier for people to drive, walk, and bike from one area to another, schools, retail centers, transit, etc. Another idea is for municipal services. When we met with the various stakeholders from the township, we did hear that there was a need for potentially to look into some kind of municipal complex or a facility where they could kind of cohabitate and share space, and also just ways to create more connectivity between various municipal services. For connectivity for social and cultural amenities, we heard that there's where's the downtown? Is it in North Beverwick? Is it somewhere else? There's no town center, and so the idea of kind of creating more of a central place for people to gather, potentially through some cultural community center where events could be held. It's just an idea, but also through connecting all of the various social nonprofit groups that currently exist. So there is a role for the township to play, just to kind of coordinate and kind of be the umbrella for all of the various organizations that already exist. And lastly, for communication and outreach, which kind of follows in the same, we heard from the Parks and Rec that there are all these events that are happening, but people don't know about them. Could there be a website or some kind of portal where people could find out about all of the things that are going on in Parsippany? Same thing for trash pickup and other services, and also transparency for government processes. All that kind of all that connectivity to get people more involved with the township, and then to understand that they're living in a wider community. So that was just the overall, idea for the vision. But we kind of are open to suggestions. If you have any comments on how to make this a little bit more personal, we welcome any changes.
Can the pictures swap to be
Yes.
Parsippany pictures?
Yes, definitely.
The first thing that I'm gonna get called on is that is not a Parsippany fire truck.
What is
That's
that
a
shirt?
shirt.
And
They're
where's
gonna be
hospital?
calling me
Yeah,
and
yeah.
saying, you let that picture go up there, that's not one
I
of
told
our
Noah this
fire trucks."
afternoon, I said, obviously we're not gonna change it, we don't have time to change it for tonight, but we're gonna get a Parsippany fire truck in
Yeah,
there.
yeah, definitely.
Like, right
It's a
away, I'm like,
placeholder.
wait, those pictures aren't us.
And we
Yeah.
don't actually have a hospital in town.
Yeah.
So,
That'll be the first thing,
This
is
gives
they'll
you a
be,
sense of the
they're
place.
not our pictures,
Yeah.
and why didn't we put our pictures?
Yeah.
You'll be hearing it.
All right, so that's a good
Can I-
suggestion. We'll definitely tweak that.
Yep, Bruce?
Just this idea of connectivity is great. I was just, and I don't have any answers. The areas where I think it would be the most beneficial are almost, by definition, the areas where it would be the most difficult
Yes.
to create. And I don't have like I said, I'm all ears. I would love to hear ideas that other towns have done or communities or what have you. I see people taking their life in their hands every time I'm on Parsippany Road as they cross over Route 80, for example, to get down to Littleton and the restaurants and shops that are down there. And it's almost like deer trails that the people have created themselves through the foot traffic. I don't know how often there's problems along the way. Obviously, there's auto accidents at that intersection. The police make jokes about it, the Parsippany Road, Littleton Road area. So what have other communities attempted, or are there some acceptable solutions because Parsippany's full of places like that, where it's very challenging.
Right. One thing I'll say is that the township has already done a circulation element, and a lot of the recommendations from that plan haven't been implemented. And so it was a good kind of starting point to see, there are a lot of traffic calming measures that we did add to that as well, but it was a good starting place to see what kind of the transportation engineers thought of it. We have highlighted a lot of hot spots of places to look in the future. I think in the transportation section, we do have a lot of specific recommendations for different intersections.
Yeah, like stretches of road that probably need sidewalks the most. And I think, I saw 3 people just tonight walking in the shoulder on Parsippany Road. I couldn't believe that they were walking, it just seems so dangerous.
Well, it's dangerous to cross the street to where the sidewalk is.
Because there was a sidewalk on the other side, and I was thinking to myself, they're choosing to walk on this side of the road where there isn't a sidewalk for a reason.
Lake Parsippany is a wonderful place to walk around for exercise, but I can't tell you the number of times I've seen groups of people walking 2 and 3 abreast in the roadway, opposite the side of the street where the sidewalk is.
Right. Yep. So,
I guess it doesn't follow their route, but I
Yeah.
do empathize with Bruce on the intersection of Parsippany Road and Littleton.
Yeah, it's a
That-
biggie.
I've been on the board for 23 years, and in year 1, that intersection was supposed to be improved. And then there was an application, a Fulton Bank was supposed to go in there where Fine Tuck's office used to be.
Right.
And, we'll wait until that's built. Well, that's not gonna be built.
So, I think there's kind of 3 prongs. There's advocacy with the county, because some of these roads are county roads.
Well, it's county and state
Yeah,
road
state,
can
and
be.
pushing them. There's grant applications that the township could pursue. There's a lot of complete streets, transportation alternatives type money out there for these priority roadways. And then there's the site plan review process. So particularly along 46, when these applicants come in and there are opportunities to connect sidewalks, that's when ideally this board can push for that, and the policy can be in the plan that you can then point to as justification.
Something as simple as light timing.
Mhm.
Right.
Though, the number of people that think the light's turning yellow, I'll beat it because
Yeah.
they're going to stop too. Oncoming has an extended green.
Mhm.
There's nothing there to tell you oncoming traffic extended green.
Yeah.
I've answered a couple of calls there with accidents, with people trying to beat that light to turn left onto Parsippany Boulevard. And oncoming has a green, and they're not looking for a car to be turning in front of them.
Regarding lights, the other thing that we tried many years ago, 202, we tried sequencing the lights on 202, so if you're heading south on 202 in the morning, if you traveled 25 to 30 miles an hour, you should catch all green lights. And if you're traveling north on 202 in the evening and travel 25 to 30, you catch all green lights.
Right, they're synchronized.
It made all the sense in the world to try something like that, except there are so many different driving habits from people that don't travel those speeds. It never worked. It
Right.
failed. The trial
25 is just a suggestion.
the trial failed.
Yeah.
One thing I will point out, and I kind of jumping ahead, but we can come back. But page 73 in the document, we just tried to kind of identify some of those specific improvements that were, these might not address some of the ones that were just brought up, but these were the ones that where we actually knew of specific changes that could be implemented, and so we kind of mapped them out, and there's a description in the text
That goes through each
one in detail.
Yeah, and these came from I think as Noah said, the 2005 circulation element, where they hadn't been implemented yet, but we also had a pretty lengthy call with Justin Lizza and kind of went through, some of his ideas about problem spots and what could be done.
Right.
Can I ask where, I noticed some of the maps have like the zones. We actually have had, in the last 2 weeks, a lot of residents that are looking at the maps that look like your map on page 27. It must be on the township's website maybe. I'm not sure where they're seeing this map, but it looks just like this. And they're quoting the zones, and they're calling the zoning department to confirm, and we're using basically engineers' official zoning
Right.
maps.
Right.
And they're not the right zone.
Wait, so they're quoting.
They're getting that map
Well, and
from
this is the
somewhere.
land use map.
This is
Not
the
a zoning map.
existing land use.
Right, but
Yeah.
They're
it must
mistakenly-
be somewhere on our website or somewhere, this
Yeah.
map.
It's probably from one of the workshops, and it's just been.
Yeah,
posted.
and they're like, no, it's B2, and my office is saying, no, I think it was an ROL, and I said, well, what does the county have? The counties had ROL, and
Right.
zoning's or engineering's official maps did, but this map had the wrong, and I didn't know how to track that down,
Was it
where
this one?
like that map too, where did that information come from?
We got that from GIS, and we pulled that data in, and I think we made some changes based on.
But like, where does the GIS information come from? Is it the county?
I
Is
think
it?
the base is the county.
Yeah, I mean that came to us from I think. Well, I'll have to look into see where we.
Because we're trying to figure out where these maps that the
Right.
residents are now looking at, they're getting this, and it looks, the map that zoning showed me today, it had all the colors, it looks like this page.
Yeah.
That says draft with all the colors.
Yeah, which is not a zoning
It
map.
also has
And it's not a
intended
zoning
zoning.
map,
Yeah.
so they're using it,
Yeah.
thinking it's accurate, and as an attorney and a real estate, and they're like, no, it's on your map, and I'm like, no, that's not our map, I don't know where you got
Yeah,
that map from.
yeah.
And it's labeled land use map. So, I mean, on the zoning, this was very early in the process that we did it. I believe that the base came from the county, and then we were spot checking it So I may coordinate with you because
I'll give
I
you
already
a
know
few
like
of those
one
lots.
issue here, yeah.
Yeah, I'll give you a few of those lots that
Yeah.
have recently come up.
Mhm.
And I've kind of instructed, because we have a lot of new people downstairs.
Yeah.
I've kind of instructed them to go on to the county site for the zoning map page.
Right.
Right.
And then go to the official zoning
Yeah.
map and look at it. Don't
Yeah,
use
it's
anything
not
else.
intended to be a substitute.
And,
for the
and
official
we
zoning
can
map.
put a disclaimer in there that this is not, you know, this is not the official map.
Right.
Yeah, because
Um,
we've
Yeah.
had it a lot
Subject to
lately.
change.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
And they're arguing, like, he's arguing, and they're like, Jen, can you take this call? He's actually arguing with us that we
Yeah.
don't know
Yeah.
the right zone.
Yeah, there's a problem if we publish it in an official document,
Yeah,
you know.
well, I think the near-term
Jen,
issue is
would
if
you-
it's on the
Would you be
town's
able to
website.
coordinate, Jennifer, on the most correct?
Yeah, I mean, the
map?
hardest thing is that, it sounds crazy, but the official zoning maps are the maps still from like the 70s.
I know. And
The
I know it's a
engineering
constant
and
challenge to try to get the right.
we have a GIS person who works in the sewer plant,
Mhm.
and they wanted her to create zoning maps, and they gave them to me, and they're down in my office, and she took the county information and printed them, so there's no way to compare page to page. They don't coordinate pages, so
Right.
literally, we would have to look at every single lot. And I told them, I'm sorry, but I'd rather still stay with the zoning maps from the 70s
Right.
that I know are accurate than
Yeah.
try to go, there's no time to go lot to lot.
Right.
And so I was trying to get a company, or wondered who you were using, that maybe somehow we could coordinate that company takes our zoning maps that are official and try to connect them somehow.
Yeah, we can look and see what you know, what data's out there. I mean,
Yeah.
if the county has, if it's digital, it might be a fairly
Because
straightforward process.
I know the county originally, probably about 15 years ago, took from Mod 4,
Mhm.
which was an Excel spreadsheet, but we knew that there was a 7% error. So we still used the maps because we knew the Excel spreadsheet was inaccurate. So
Right.
I just wanted to bring that up because it's happening a lot, and I'm not sure where it's coming from.
Okay.
So-
So we'll just confirm all the data sources, because this was, like I said, was one of the early maps that we did, so my memory is a little foggy.
I think we still need a footnote,
Disclaimer,
though.
yeah.
that-
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And something to remember is, you know, part of the plan after this is to revise some of the
Right.
zones.
You
So
gotta know where to-
whatever we print
right.
is going to be out of date. Or the only thing we'd be able to say is, this was the zoning map
At the time
at
of
the time that we created the plan.
Do
Yeah.
you, because maybe down the road, the town has to hire a company.
Yeah.
That the old zoning maps and your new data are combined and
Right.
put into it. And I have a company who gave us a quote, but it would scare us if I told you what the quote was it scared me when I got it. I
Yeah.
said, I had no idea.
Because
I
it
thought
could be
they
a piece of work. I mean,
Yeah, I
there's
didn't,
a
I
lot
didn't
of-
really
lot of
realize,
work
because
involved.
this company has been doing the tax maps for assessing.
Mm-hmm.
So his maps are accurate, but what they explained to me is they're only on paper. They don't attach.
Right.
So
Oh, God.
he could create a document, but he couldn't create like a GIS document.
Hmm.
So I wondered who you used. Maybe we could try to.
Well, we could do it. I mean, we're
Yeah.
doing it now.
I'm
for-
pretty sure we downloaded it from the county.
Yeah, we
It's just-
downloaded it
yeah.
from the county.
Yeah.
I mean, I think to get a better sense, we'd have to just go and see, have to take a look at it first. It's something that, I mean, we're kind of doing it now in Hoboken. It's not as rigorous as what you're describing, but it might not be a heavy lift. It really depends on what the data is.
Jennifer, did these people say, I got it off the internet, it has to be right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Facebook said it was
I
straight,
actually
yeah.
scanned and sent us the map, and it looks like page whatever that
They're,
page was.
they're probably getting, I think that there's a draft version of some of the existing conditions that's up on the township's website.
So maybe
And
they're
so
printing
I
it
wanna
from the website.
coordinate
And I
with
remember
them
one of them had the
tomorrow
actual
on
zone numbers
what's
on
up there
it.
and make sure that we have a disclaimer that this is, you know, it's a draft planning document, it's not a substitute for the official zoning map. Check with the zoning office.
You know, contact the
That
zoning
kind of
department
thing.
for the,
Yeah,
they're
because-
correct.
Because, yeah, it was never the intent that people would be using that to guide their development decisions.
Because page 39 is really nice, like if we knew that information was accurate, that's
Yeah.
a great map.
Yeah, we
Um,
want it to be accurate, that's our hope, so I'll coordinate with you on that.
Okay. But just to give you just a quick overview of the document, as Susan, we have an intro chapter, we have existing conditions, as Susan mentioned, you've already seen. And then the third chapter is issues and opportunities, I believe is what it's called. And that's kind of where we have most of our recommendations. So that's really the kind of the guts of the plan. But we wanted to, as you'll see when you go through it, each page, when we go through each of the kind of sections, transportation, community facilities, open space, etc., we just included some kind of notes, some takeaways from the public outreach and from the public survey. Because we did go through, through that process, and we don't really talk about it up front in the public outreach, but we wanted to make sure that it was represented in the plans.
Like here.
Right.
Starts out. This
What
is
page is that?
page 71.
So, yeah, so on that page for transportation and circulation, we just kind of show kind of a highlight from the public survey and some of the survey takeaways. And we explained in the beginning that these issues and opportunities came from, as we mentioned before, the public outreach, the existing condition analysis, feedback from stakeholders, etc. But we kind of brought that in just to give it a little more context. That was just kind of the approach.
And a couple things we added, I think I mentioned the last planning board meeting, we had a meeting with the zoning board, and Judy was there, and Tom Dinsmore came, and Councilman DePiero as well. And I thought that was actually a really helpful meeting, and I think they shared some of your same concerns, and they were on board with things like tree preservation. And kind of a big takeaway for me from that meeting was just there needs to be better and more consistent coordination between the two boards. They were interested in having regular, maybe it's annual or semi-annual, meeting of the two boards just to talk about. Everybody seems kumbaya. No, but because some municipalities have a member that serves on both boards. That's permissible by the MLUL, and some do that. And a benefit of that is that you have somebody who is hearing kind of both ends of the story and can then come back and report, to the planning board, hey, we're seeing a lot of these types of variances. We should probably look at that, or go back to the zoning board and say, remember that the master plan talks about this. We should keep that in mind. So just a little bit more overlap.
When Mr. Dinsmore was a member of the Board of Adjustment, he authored annually a report that came to us with the big issues that they were seeing over the course of that year.
Jen, does the board do that now?
Yes.
Sorry to cut you off, Bob.
I give them my report at the end of the year, which is, it lists for them what they've approved, what they've denied. It gives them a tally. They take that, and then they give us a report, and they have been doing that every year. A lot of times it tends to be the same things.
Right.
Because
does that come to us?
Yes.
I haven't seen it in quite a while.
I'm trying to, there was a little bit of a battle at the end of last year with them and the administration and the council, so I don't think they actually did it. They want to give a presentation now to the council of it, but a lot of it were the changes that Susan, you finally got to the council.
Right.
And a lot of them, I don't remember if the planning board remembers, but they wanted to change building impervious percentages. They want them raised, and the planning board did not agree. So a lot of their proposed changes were not agreed by the planning board, and they did not come into effect.
Did I hear correctly? They want to raise impervious?
They want less variances and to not be as strict when I deny applications for coverages. So they want to allow more coverages. Like, they didn't want to include a pool in impervious coverage, and I tried to explain that it doesn't seep into the ground, and if you don't count it, I will have gigantic in-ground pools in every backyard if you remove it from. So there's definitely, I had to attend a couple meetings at the beginning of this year, and they really misunderstand the things I'm sending. When I'm at the meetings and I'm in the back, they'll say, well, I don't understand why this is here. They had an AC unit there, and then I kind of raised my hand and say, but the first AC unit they had there was illegal. So they removed the illegal AC and tried to put a new AC. So yes, it still needs a variance. They have a difficulty understanding that, and I think they want me to approve more than I am. And they also, Justin Liza has made several presentations to them trying to explain about the water and how Parsippany has the water issues. And they're not seem to be taking that away. So
I mean, that was something that came out of the meeting, is
they feel that there's a lot of variances that are very minor, and, you know, can we wiggle on that? You know, well, what if it's only exceeding the coverage by like 0.4%? Like, is that a big deal? And actually, there was an agreement among themselves, and I think where we came down is like, no, the rule is the rule. And if you
They
like,
want me to pick and choose.
Yeah, and where's the
well,
line
this
if you-
one's
if you
not a
allow
big
this one?
deal,
Yeah.
but that one,
You don't
Jen,
have
you
that
should deny.
But you don't have that
I
discretion.
don't have
You
that
don't, yeah,
discretion.
and that's where we
Point
came
zero
down. There's no
zero is
discretion.
it, like
Right.
point zero one, and it's
Right.
over.
Right.
Yeah, there's definitely
Yeah.
a misunderstanding.
And they feel that they are, you know, I think they would like relief from kind of what they see as, you know, itty bitty variances.
And they're
you know,
probably getting a lot of pressure. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you're getting these variances requested because
Right.
people want them. And
Right.
there's just so many of them coming now. And maybe they're a victim of their own circumstance by approving too many of them. If they
Well, yeah.
denied more of them, maybe there'd be less of them.
I'll,
But,
I'll
you know,
send them a copy of my resolution of denial from tonight so they can see what one looks
Well,
like.
I mean,
I didn't mean that to be
yeah.
snarky at all.
No, it's you know, it's tough, and I, as I said to them, and I think you can all appreciate this, like, they have a hard job. They see more of the you know, individual homeowner than this
Mhm.
board typically does. I mean, you saw it a little bit tonight, but you guys see a lot of, you know, businesses and corporations, and it's a little bit easier to say no than when it's just some person who wants to put in some steps or something.
I don't think anyone, well, I don't know why we're going down this road
Yeah.
tonight,
Yeah.
but I don't think anyone disagrees with the
Right.
decks and dormers. The use variances, I
Right.
think
The
we need
uses
to have a
are tough,
conversation
yeah.
about.
So that they were interested in that too, you know, like, can we address some of these use variances that, you know, let's change the uses where we all know that the uses should be allowed. Why should we have to give use variances if they're uses that everybody wants to see? And we already kind of have some of that in the master plan,
Mhm.
looking at business zones, things like yoga studios where right now you need a variance in most instances.
Oh my God.
But they also, they really just want a giant decrease in the variances, and some of them, you know, the rules are accurate. A shopping center with a yoga with all that parking is a parking variance, so if it
Right.
wasn't a use variance, it would be a parking variance, and you
Right.
want that in a shopping center. I just truly believe they want less of them, and
Mhm.
then
They
don't
do.
be on the board if you want less of
They do.
them, you know, but I don't know how to fix it. If when I attend, it seems very argumentative, but if I don't attend, you know, I don't know how to
Things get lost.
explain to the members the questions. And the residents, I have to be honest, we in zoning take care of them immensely.
Yeah,
I draw their
you do.
proposed on the surveys, I calculate their coverages, so when they're coming, they're not explaining, as well to the board,
Mhm.
because they don't understand, cause I've done it for them, and I don't know how to fix that.
Yeah.
I don't, you know, what do other towns do? Does the zoning officer attend those meetings? You know, do I switch and go to attend those meetings and not these meetings? And then I can answer those. But I truly believe that they didn't really want me there. You
Yeah.
know, they seem aggravated when I'm there because I can answer those questions. I'd like to fix it, I just don't know how.
Yeah, I think that there are definitely issues of administration and coordination that are beyond the master plan that we need to look at. But you know, I think the takeaway for me was that there is common ground between the two boards, and I think that there's a lot that can be done going forward on just making sure that we're communicating. You know, like making sure that this board gets the annual reports. And Bob, you do an annual report, correct? Do you? You could. I have to for my planning board. It goes up on the website actually. So, you know, just a little bit more back and forth. I'm not trying to put work on you, Bob.
We should do that, though. If we're not doing that already, we should,
Yeah.
both boards should.
And that's actually a recommendation. There were a lot of other groups that are kind of formal
Right.
advisory committees. And we met with a lot of them through the process, and a lot of them don't do annual reports. So they kind of meet, talk about stuff, and it doesn't necessarily lead to anything. And so there might be a little bit more accountability if there were some kind of reporting done that was maybe given to the mayor or at least posted online, and other people would have some awareness and it might encourage participation. And it's just, you know, in the theme of overall connectivity and, you know, bringing people together, I think that transparency is a good thing.
Because there's a lot of good work being done by your advisory committees.
Right.
And we just want to make sure that that's.
I feel kind of like an old married couple. I just say, well, you know what I meant.
Right.
I've got a concern and I have no solution for it, but is flexibility in the plans. like I said, I've been sitting on this board for 23 years, and I've watched a cycle go through on parking. We allow X number of compact parking spaces. Look at the highways. No one's driving compact, not no one, but compact cars are a rarity. Everyone's driving an SUV or a pickup truck. I mean, if everyone was driving smart cars, you could take a parking lot designed for 250 and put 500 in it.
Right.
But that's not the case today.
Yeah.
And I've gone to parking lots where the only thing left, I drive a Jeep Cherokee. It's an SUV. It's a little bigger than a compact. And there's no place for me to park that I can open my doors.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a little bit of an older way of looking at parking, I would say.
Well, it's still on the books
I
here,
know,
though.
yeah.
25
we
years
have that
ago,
as a
no one knew
recommendation,
what a
look at
cell
your
tower
parking.
was.
Yeah. So we can include that. I think we already have, looking at your ratios and making sure that they're up to date with the latest standards. We can look at that, a
Well,
compact car.
is there a way to look at what Detroit is selling percentage-wise and our percentage?
You mean Tokyo?
Or Kentucky, or wherever, Mexico,
Right.
Canada, wherever.
We can look at that.
Don't they still say whatever Detroit's turning out? I don't know. Anyway, you can look at row upon row of empty compact spaces,
Yeah.
because people know they can't fit.
Good point.
So I will probably have many notes as
Yeah.
I've given to you before. But one of the things I heard, which I like, is that we're going to be more direct about what we're looking for, more prescriptive about what we mean by these things. Because
Right.
up till now, I've seen a lot of comments about just presenting the facts without an opinion about what we want. So I
Right.
want to make sure we do get to a
Yeah.
point where we present what we're looking for.
Yeah, if you feel that there's something that isn't going far enough, or isn't saying exactly what you want to say, or saying something that you don't agree with, that's definitely
Mhm.
what we want to hear. If you see something factual, obviously that too.
Yeah.
But it's the latter that I think is really important to talk about.
Oh, yeah, so one thing that we still need to do is take this issues and opportunities and then kind of distill it into an action plan, basically a matrix of what are the task items, who's responsible, what's the time frame.
Okay.
You know, I don't know how many of the items have a cost associated with them, but we can give an order of magnitude if it's appropriate. But just kind of a general, some to-do list.
We can scrum it out. We'll
What do
put
you-
sizes to them all.
What do you mean by to-do list?
Well, it puts it all in one place so that, whoever's looking to implement this, and it may be this board, or it may be township council, because there may be, appropriations involved. It gives it one place where here's everything that is in the master plan, and the planning board is identified as a recommendation. We like to call it a to-do list. It doesn't mean that you're gonna check everything off in the same order, or that you're necessarily gonna do everything, or that there may be something that comes up that isn't in that list.
Yeah.
But it's just handy to have.
Is there a date that you plan to be done? Like, how does?
So, yeah, you're
A timeline.
skipping ahead, but,
Oh, I'm sorry.
what we, and Scott and I were talking about scheduling, and Nora and I have talked about it too, looking kind of out at the fall. And I think what we're shooting for is, a public hearing, the second meeting in November. The first meeting is the night before election night, and I think that's not an ideal time to have a public hearing. So, we're gonna do this second meeting in November. So that gives plenty of time. We're gonna give you a deadline, hopefully a couple weeks from tonight. But if something comes up and you notice it in 3 weeks, let us know. We're gonna be continuing to refine. But if we could get, your comments back in the next 2 weeks, October 7th, I think is the next date.
Just, I don't know if you've addressed this at all, and it may be unaddressable in a way, but is there any process in place or whatever to figure out why the recommendations that Noah recommended from 2014 or prior to that, they must have been good ideas.
Yeah.
How do we avoid what we're doing now meeting the same fate? I mean, there's no perfect solution,
Yeah.
but was it just bureaucratic inertia? Was it just finances?
I think your idea of creating a to-do list is
Then
an
you-
excellent idea,
then
because
you
I
have
think
to
that's
own
what's.
it.
Yeah.
But in order, if I'm answering your question, but you'd have to go through here and fish out the various items that are action items. If at the end of the report, there's an actual list that people can put on a bulletin board and circle the things that are their
Right.
responsibility.
Yeah.
Hopefully they'll get done.
And a lot was done.
Yeah, a lot was,
that.
definitely. There were
Yeah.
a lot of recommendations that were accomplished, a lot involved multiple stakeholders, involved a lot of money. So there are a lot of factors involved, and I think that for some of them, I think that some had been advanced to, maybe like a preliminary stage, but not, to the design and build stage. And so what this does is it kind of keeps people, notified that these are still,
Keeps it in the mix.
keeps it in the mix, which needs to happen continually.
I think that's very typical in a plan like this. I mean, you're gonna have a lot of recommendations, and some of them, are easier to do than others. Some
Mhm.
of them are gonna be short-term, and some may even be a little bit aspirational or long-term. So we'll try to identify that as well in terms of timeframe.
There's a section in here which I feel is probably missing, which has to do with the affordable housing and the growth that will make to our community. When we go straight to point 2.1, which talks about the size of our town in terms of population, it seems to me like just the affordable housing elements that are going to be incorporated will probably grow our town to 60 to 65,000. And what are we doing just to account for that? And how will that change our community? And what are we going to do to account for it?
It's outlined on page 114.
You see all of that in one page?
Yeah, John, it's a good point. We did add it, I think the councilman did it. And it largely reflects the housing element and the master plan reexamination report that you just adopted. But I think you're right, when we're talking about population and growth, we should at least acknowledge that,
Yeah.
this is happening and it will affect.
Because the conclusions early on are that the town is not growing very rapidly,
Right.
but we're about to undergo quite a rapid change. And how will that affect our public uses, our utilities, our schools?
Yep, good point.
Really.
So I also just wanted to touch on, because I know it was a point, a major point that we talked about in our last meeting, and I don't know who was here, but I was here and I presented the land use plan, which is sort of the last section, starts here. And couple of changes that I made in response to what we talked about. If you remember, we discussed Rainbow Lakes residential density you felt wasn't quite right. It needs to be the slightly higher density. So it's medium density rather than moderate. And so basically now that's shown, and essentially the 3 historic lake communities are now at that same density. So take a look at that. And then the other thing that we talked a little bit about was this idea of, it's the purple and pink on the map. What's a corporate office campus versus industrial? Like what is that distinction? And so I went back and I looked, and I think a good distinction is the way that your SED zoning actually already defines it. It's what is the extent of office in the use? So in some of your SED zones, office is only allowed if it already exists. So it's not meant to encourage, new significant offices, and it's meant to be smaller scale than the industrial. So I kind of use that as a guide. So you'll see there is now more of this map that is in the dark purple. So to the east of I-87 along Jefferson Road, that area, that I think is probably more light industrial than corporate office in nature. And the same in I think it's the Fox Hill Industrial Park. We talked about that last time. So the designation has changed in those 2 areas so that it's light industrial, and we changed the narrative as well to make that clear what the distinction is. Now the corporate offices, the big campuses that is primarily professional offices, there may be some manufacturing going on interior, but it's sort of self-contained, it's not as much truck traffic. Maybe it's a lab, but it's a little bit more like professional office in nature, whereas light industry may be warehousing, distribution centers, also manufacturing, but a little bit more truck heavy. It's kind of a distinction to make. So take a look at the narrative that
So you
accompanies that.
changed that to match more what you felt the ordinance already was, or this is more of a proposed?
It's more what it kind of is already, and I think then the next step is, should you use the same general zoning category for like the Matt Cali campus as you do for a warehouse on Jefferson Road? Maybe it should be a different category altogether.
I loved your idea of reducing the zones and kind of incorporating more of them, because a lot of them are so close.
So similar.
They're so similar, and like we said, that would minimize the use variances, and it's confusing to tell someone, well, there's 34 zones, like we have to look it up. I think it really would help all the departments with incorporating some of the zones to be the same, and now's the perfect time. If
Yeah.
it doesn't happen now, I feel like it's never going to. This is the closest we've ever been.
It's one of my pet peeves, and Ed and Leslie with the affordable housing stuff, which is unavoidable, but I said, you guys are killing me, you're adding more zones. We have to, there was no other way to deal with those sites. I mean, you have to do them like that, but I think there's a lot.
It's just made for
we
the
got.
zoning department to the town is so large now, but I don't have anyone else that understands. So I have an office of zoning employees who do no longer understand the ordinance. I mean, it's over 600 pages now.
Yeah.
With these new ordinances, I don't even know what it is now. And so much has changed. I mean, we've made a lot of changes, but if we don't simplify it, there will be lots of mistakes made for it because I can't review every application.
Yeah, it's
I have
very
to start training a group to do it. And right now, with all those zones and even all the changes we've talked about, and this master plan is going to create more changes, it's becoming extremely complicated to review an application. And people forget we have 10 days.
Right.
From the date that person submits, I have 10 days. So if there's 100 in the drawer, you know, what do I work all night long until I get them? We don't have the staff to do that. We need to at some point start to simplify. I know both boards want to keep making all these new ordinances, but at some point we have to simplify because it's become overwhelming.
It's very unwieldy, for
What's
sure.
the rule of thumb, Susan? More than 12 or 15 zones and you've got too many?
Yeah, and I've seen places like this. I mean, I worked in a place in New York where there were a lot of corporate headquarters very similarly, and clearly the zones had been written for them. You know, and you could just tell. And then when you start to look at them, they're actually all almost identical, but minor differences. So that
Those
was,
you can kind of carve out because they're one project per zone.
right.
So you can almost carve those out and then talk about the more general zones and
Right.
get those down to a manageable.
Well, and if they're built out, like for example, you have your POD and the COD zone, which is right up here where Embassy Suites is and the office is around. You know, those zones were created to facilitate that development. Well, the development is built, so can we create a zone that brings it, you know, it's compliant with that zone, but it doesn't have to get into the level of detail that was required when that was being developed, you know, in terms of whatever the specific criteria were. Does it meet the bulk, can you create a zone that meets the bulk standards? And then you should be fine. We did that actually in Hoboken for some of their redevelopment zones that had been built out, completed, everything was expired. Now we can bring them into conventional zoning.
So we'd start that in December, right? Because as soon as it's done November, all right.
I think there's going to be a lot of zoning that we look at, hopefully in the new year. So, just the last thing is there weren't a ton of changes on the narrative that goes with the land use plan, but I think I did make a couple changes on thinking about residential scale, which was front and center tonight. So take a look at that. I mean, I've been thinking a lot, and Scott and I were talking about this afternoon, height and just the design of homes. Are there things you can do to encourage homes not to be big and boxy? I mean, I think as you all saw, 35 feet can be high in some neighborhoods and with some streets. And even though it's zoning compliant, you know, is that the height that you want? And I know Tom Densmore, this is his issue too. He's talked about that, you know, varying it based on the setback or even the width of the street. So we can look at those.
And that 35 feet is not to the peak, that's to the mean, what do you want to call it,
Right.
natural level.
Right.
So
It can
the
actually be
house could
higher.
be 40 feet. I didn't want to say that tonight, so I just kept my mouth closed. But the 35 feet is not to the peak even. So the visual is dramatic. And they're right, everyone's building, I mean, I do several new single families a week, and they are building to the max.
Yeah. Whereas they did.
You want to see a prime example of that, go on Parsippany Road, turn down Allentown, and immediately look to your left. There's a tear down there.
That one that's going up.
It's going up.
I know.
Picture that next
I'm
time.
sorry, but I approve.
It's a monster.
I approve those. They meet the
I mean, if
ordinance.
they're compliant.
They're compliant.
Exactly.
You know, they're
Susan, does it
compliant.
make sense to go height from the lowest grade as opposed to the average grade?
Most of them, it's difficult at the zoning part because I'm not trained in grading. You know, like that's not the part
Right,
that I'm.
right.
So I'm responsible for height, but I have to go based on the engineer's grading.
I was gonna say,
So
we have
that-
engineers,
That
yeah.
mean, but I'm the first stop. They're the second.
Mhm.
So by having that mean kind of helped. You know, if it was different, and it's only a difference of 5 feet.
Right.
So it's like at the curb unless there's a 5-foot difference.
Right.
And they're taking from the average. But yeah, it's.
I mean, it's a balance too. You do want to be able to encourage homes to be upgraded, and there are some homes, particularly I would say in lake communities, that need to be upgraded and maybe even need to be replaced. So those are invariably going to be bigger than what was there. It's just, can we make sure that they're not
Well, that-
towering over everything else?
That one in Allentown that we were talking about, that was a difficult one because it's on a downhill section of Allentown, first of all.
And where'd they measure
And
from?
then secondly, it's elevated, the lot is elevated from Allentown, so
It's already high.
if you build a single story, it would look like it's high. But this is, I assume a 35-foot house.
Yeah.
We talked
It
about
just towers
FAR
over
with the
everything
zoning
else
board, floor area ratio, and that's in here as something to study. I will say they were not enthused at the idea, and it is complicated. An FAR variance is a zoning board variance. It doesn't come to this board. It, by statute has to go to the zoning board. So anytime there's an FAR variance, it's a zoning board application. And
But it also has to be caught by zoning. And
I know.
that's a difficult thing
It's,
to catch
and it's
in
very
zoning.
complicated to try to figure out what the right number should be across neighborhoods. And so, we put it as further study. I think it's something that needs to be looked at.
Yeah.
I mean, 35 feet turns into 40 feet, and 30 feet turns into 35 feet. It's just there's houses in Lake Parsippany that don't see the sun, and they're not little shacks.
Right.
They're just
Normal houses.
yeah.
Yeah, and I know the trend right now is to build out to the maximum limits. There's always a chance that turns around, and I think that the character of Parsippany that we all like is that there are yards in our neighborhoods, and so we want to make sure that our ordinances and zoning account for
And those yards help
provide for that.
replenish the water table.
Yep.
Yes, that too. Yeah, so permeable space.
So any other questions? You have some homework.
Little bit.
Any questions or comments?
What is it that you would like us to, just, could you be explicit about what exactly you'd like back from us?
We can send this to you electronically as well.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, if we send a PDF, and I think that's how you commented the last time, right? You made comments in the PDF.
Or if
Okay.
you just want to list the page number, whatever's easiest for you.
Sure.
Yeah.
And send to Nora, can you be the funnel of comments?
My name's spelled wrong.
Oh,
No, no.
That's the last thing.
We can't have that.
Complete redo.
It's not F, it's H. On the front.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Judy.
Susan Wright is also,
Oh.
there's no K in Dominic.
Uh-oh.
Maybe we'll
And
maybe we'll
while-
get all the
Testing
names.
us.
And while we're at it, there's a space between Vaughn and Nathan.
Yeah.
And Bob is spelled backwards.
Okay. Yeah, so the master plan reexamination report that you just adopted, with all of those errors, maybe I'll send a correction page. Yeah, that's good. Thanks. We call the acknowledgements page the most important page of the plan, so thank you for.
That's the one we care most about, right?
Susan, does the state mandate that this has to be done in calendar year 2019 or?
No.
No.
The only mandate you have is it has to be every 10 years from your last one. And technically, you just did one a month ago, or a few weeks ago.
So we can stew on this for a little while.
Yes, please.
No, you can't. One ordinance changes.
Yeah, I think there are things in here